Hello, Lisa here. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to this unboxing first impressions flip through of the Abstract Heart Oracle, a new upcoming deck by Alexander Speaks that is currently funding on Kickstarter. I'm real excited to get into this because I heard from Alexander quite a while ago when this deck was first being imagined and worked on and created. And I know from those discussions that a whole lot of heart and soul went into this project. And I know that Alexander's really hoping to see this come into its like full finished version, but just so you know, this is a prototype, so it's going to give us an idea of the cards, but it's not going to be what the final product would look like once the deck funds on Kickstarter and Alexander can send this off to be printed formally and all that good stuff. Oh my gosh, the production quality that Alexander has planned for this deck is really, really, really exciting. So ignore this little box. This is a two-piece box, and he did mention that the final version of the box will be a book style like flip open box, and there's a whole bunch of other changes, namely the cardstock will be thicker, it will be a matte rose petal finish, and there will be matte colored edges that are matte blue gilded edges. And there's going to be, most notably, the biggest difference I think is that the surface of the cards are going to have the same kind of beautiful artwork. This is a sampling. It may be like further refined in the final version, but it will have this beautiful artwork and these keywords, but it will have spot gloss to show a sigil. So there'll be a sigil for every single card. So spot gloss is that sort of shiny but kind of transparentish coating that you might see in different places on, say, a book or a box that you might get in one of your decks. I do know that from what's been described, stunning final production quality is what it sounds like. So that's very, very exciting. But first, a little bit, from what I understand about this deck, we're looking at really the world of emotion. And what I really like about this, from what I've seen so far, is that it's a balance of emotions. So we're seeing difficult emotions, and we're also seeing more positive, more uplifting, more nurturing emotions. So that is what I'm looking forward to diving into as we go through the cards. I do know that Alexander also curated or collected the water for these different cards from various locations to sort of feed further into the energy of each card and the emotion that it represented, which I think is really, really cool. Now, I will have a link to the Kickstarter down below so you can watch the video that Alexander created about this deck, which speaks a lot more about the story. But for now, let's just zoom in and take a look at the cards. So again, keeping in mind that this is going to highlight the watercolor artwork and the keywords, but there would obviously be sigils on top of this as well in the finished version. So insignificant, and I don't think these are in any kind of order. There will also be a book that accompanies the deck. Worthless, oof. And it's interesting to me, insignificant and worthless are two different but kind of adjacent experiences. Ridiculed. Interesting how this almost looks like something looming. Worried. Worry can be so chaotic. Overwhelmed. All this stuff surrounding just a small, clear white space. Judgmental. Alexander also mentioned that there would be hot stamped foiling happening on the front of the cards as well. So I really feel like while a prototype can give you a general idea of a deck, it definitely is not what the final version would look like. Frightened. Ugh, all these like little spiky tendrils. Isolated. It's so interesting to me the way that watercolor art like this can really convey a feeling. Anxious. Vulnerable. Humiliated. Ignored. Confused. This is such a great, I don't know how to describe what I get from these images. It reminds me a little bit of, I guess, like a Rorschach or like scrying in a way, what you see in each piece of this artwork. It's like, in this case, the way that it's done here, I'm almost feeling like I'm looking upward or outward in a way, which really conveys that feeling of awe to me. Eager, yes, it's almost like a flame. Excited. Astonished. And again, here we have astonished, but we also had awe. And these are adjacent feelings, but they're different. And I like that there's a lot of cards here. I believe, I don't know the exact number. I know I knew it at one point. It probably does say on the Kickstarter how many total cards, but this is like a chunky deck. This doesn't feel like it's one of those decks that you're only going to get a handful of cards. Perplexed. I've definitely struggled when it comes to emotion decks, finding one that I feel like really captures the balance of emotion in a way that's workable, particularly for your own personal work. Like if you really want to dive into or dip into your own emotions, having something that can like, you can pull a card and like journal about that emotion, or maybe how and when you've experienced this in your life, I think could be a really powerful way to work with this particular kind of a deck. Disbelief. Hopeful. And this is kind of what hope is like, right? It's like one small spark where that kind of eventually hopefully builds and builds into something more substantial. Playful. I love the flowers here. Or that's what I see, flowers. Dismayed. Sensitive. Almost reminds me of like a leak. Like when we feel sensitive, oftentimes it's because we have wounds and we're seeping a little bit, right? That's kind of what I get from this. Again, I think decks like this can be really great for working with your intuition and really like, what do you see in the image? Like how can you tap into that? What is it you get from it? Amazed. It's interesting because I said that and then I looked at the card again. At first I was like, oh, two pinkish blobs, right? And then I looked at it again and this almost reminds me of somebody who's jumped up and has their feet kicked back behind them and they're flinging their arms up in the air with their head tilted to the sky. And this person is almost like looking on like, wow. Furious. And I believe the spot gold, what did he call it? The hot gold foiling would help with the font to pop on these images. So while again we have the keywords and we have the artwork, this is not that final composition. And I know it's hard to kind of envision what the final version could potentially look like. And I just kind of want to remind you guys that when you're, from what I understand from talking to creators behind the scenes, trying to create a deck like this, particularly one with so many beautiful features to it, it's so hard to put something like this together and have a final version to share with people, especially where they can see all of the cards without it costing literally an arm and a leg up front. And the whole point really, I think, of programs like, or systems, I guess, like Kickstarter, programs like Kickstarter, Hostile, look at this, is that it gives you an opportunity. Creators who maybe can't bring together the capital they need up front to really make their dream a reality, to make this finished product a reality, can crowdfund with people who believe in that project. Courageous. I love that all the artwork is completed for this. Devastated. It's really just a matter of getting all the files sent off to the printer once the Kickstarter funds, and I think that's really great. Embarrassed. It almost feels like oppressive in this card, and that can be how that feels. Withdrawn. Nope, this is me and my space. This is my space. I'm going to just crawl into it now. Insecure. Liberated. I love that we see a rainbow here. Ecstatic. Frustrated. It's like a wall in front of you. That's what this feels like. Distant. This almost does look like a sky view of something that maybe is very large, but looks small because we're so far away from it. Repelled. Appalled. Terrified. Wonderful use of, I think, vocabulary and like really leaning into different ways to look at emotions. Ridiculed. I thought we had ridiculed in the beginning. What did we have that was similar? Oh no, we did have ridiculed here. So we do have a couple different ridiculed. I don't know which will be the final version. Again, keep in mind this is a prototype. Disappointment. And I also know that some of the artwork may shift a bit in the final version. But the beautiful thing about artwork like this, loathing, is that it's so intuitive and fluid and loose. Revolted. And revulsion. So we have revolted and revulsion. Repugnant. Frightened. I think this is the one that really one of the ones that really caught my eye on the Kickstarter page. I could be wrong, but I feel like I remember seeing this one and thinking, wow. Disrespected. Nauseated. Avoidance. Look at all the things we're doing to distract from this pure center. remorseful. It really feels like this artwork was truly channeled, guilty, indifferent, inadequate. I can't imagine anybody not relating to so many of these words. Alienated, startled, depressed, energetic. This is so great. This looks like a lightning bolt. I love it. Shocked. Being shocked, it's like a moment in time, right? Like everything freezes. Amazed. I have to admit, even though I know that the final version, astonished, maybe that's the one I'm thinking of. Yeah, astonished, awe, and amazed. Isn't it interesting too how they're all A words? I think that's super interesting. It's one of those things where I feel like there's so many different ways or different words that people might connect with, right? There's abandoned, but then there's distant, or there's, you know, it's interesting because, oh, empty. Sorry, that just totally distracted me from what I was going to say. And yet it's not devoid of color. There's actually been some wash of some kind, something like creamy ivory almost on the page. You can see the texture. It's not just like a blank card, even though it kind of looks like that until you get up to it. And apathetic. I forget what point I was making earlier. Infuriated. Oh, I love this for confident. It feels very solar plexus and very like chest out forward kind of energy. Provoked. I keep interrupting myself because literally the artwork keeps capturing my attention. And to me, that's a really good sign. It's like, okay, there's a lot in here. Violated, yes. Respected. So we had respected, but we also had disrespected. Resentful. Jealous. Oh, yes. Hurt. There's a curling up in oneself I see in that card. Detestable. Aversion. Hesitant. Inquisitive. There is for sure a very abstract element to this deck. I mean, it is called the Abstract Heart Oracle, right? It's an abstract artistic interpretation of the emotional experiences that we hold in our hearts, right? The experiences that we've had. This is one of the least abstract images, I think, in the entire deck from what I've seen online. Water. And I think this is so beautiful. I love the lemniscate. I love the fact that we have water, but it could also be tears here. It could be many manifestations of that element show up there. And then we have some blank cards here at the end. I think there was a reason for that, but I can't remember if there's going to be blank cards in the deck. I don't believe that there is, but I'm sure that Alexander can correct us down below in the comments if I'm wrong about that. But in general, here's some thoughts. So when this deck comes out in its final version, it would be a 400 GSM cardstock. This is a pretty sizable deck. Let's just zoom this out. This is a pretty sizable deck. If I were to guess, I'd say it's in the ballpark of 60 plus cards. So it will be quite chunky. And these cards are 3.5 by 5 inches. So they're like an oracle size deck. So for reference, I'm just grabbing my Dark Mansion Tarot because it's handy. I just want to show the backings. Yeah, so that gives you an idea of the size difference there. So you're looking at a thick deck and also quite a chunky deck with a bit of a rose petal finish. Really, really durable. Oftentimes when we're talking about cardstock, what we're really talking about is how well it's going to shuffle and how usable it's going to be, right? So I think this is going to be a very, very usable deck. And I think in the final version, you're going to have something that's going to hold up and be really, really sturdy, but also really beautiful, tactilely. What's the word I'm looking for? Texturally, tactilely. So I think it's going to be a really, really beautiful finished product. I can't wait to see how it turns out. It's always fun to get my hands on these prototypes to kind of get a peek at what a deck might look like. And then to see a final version in the end and see kind of how it all came out is really exciting to me. So definitely check out the Kickstarter down below. We'll give it a little fan, but again, keep in mind the final version will be a different cardstock. Thank you again so much to Alexander for letting me have a peek at this deck before it comes out. I'm just going to flip a random card here from the center. Oh, let's do 2 cards. We got Furious and Amazed. Check it out. Very, very pretty. Thank you again so much for hanging out with me. do check out the Kickstarter link down below. Have a peek at it. See if it's your jam. Again, there's a lot of heart and soul in this project, so do give it a look. Thank you again so much. And as always, please do remember to click the like button if you enjoyed this video or you found value in it. Subscribe if you're new here. Don't forget to hit the notification bell. Thank you so much. And may your magic always shine from the inside out. Bye, guys.